Want to press record? Awesome. Don't leave, people, just click got it. All right. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. We've got a full agenda. We'll try to go through most of this as quickly as we can so we can get to Dr. Zabel's presentation, which is when should I be concerned about my teen's behavior? And my answer is sort of always. I'm always concerned about something that some teenager in this house is doing. But I think we normally start with a report from Mr. Harris. Ms. Champ is filled in for him tonight. So does the administration have anything to share with us?
Actually, I do, and I should have known you guys were going to pick me to go first because that's how I'm looking.
I can roll around back to you if you're not quite ready.
I literally just had the notes. Can you give me like 1 minute? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So some of just the FYIs, the readathon the reading part has come to an end. It ended yesterday. Currently, we have over $13,000 in pledges. Yeah, it's been amazing. So now we're really just trying to push all the students to enter the minutes that they've read, so that all the pledges that were a pledge per minute can go and be collected. Everything that was a flat pledge, I think, just got is getting processed. And then we also there are some prizes for like the top reader and the top fundraiser for each of the 2 grades. So we need everyone to enter all their minutes so that we can go ahead and figure out who's getting those prizes. And I think Julie's on, and
yeah, I'm here.
So if you have anything else you want to report, but you have been a rock star. So thank you so much.
That's very kind of you. Actually, all I did was say, help, I've never done this before, and everyone was so supportive. But yeah, it's been phenomenal. Really surprising. But again, I don't want to like count our minutes before they hatch, so to speak. You know what I mean? I think we're probably good, but yeah. So I know kids especially probably want to know, hey, when are the awards going to be announced? And I'm putting out that like maybe like 7 to 10 days, because I hear that there might be some like actual like hard copy logs waiting for me in the PTA mailbox at school. So I just don't know how long it's going to take me to process all that stuff. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And then our next, I think, big event is going to be bingo night. And that is scheduled for April 21st from 7 to 9. The doors will open at 6:30, and there will be a lot more information forthcoming on that, but just sort of save the date. We put it on the PT board calendar. I think it's going to be, if it's not already, Pam, on the PTA website calendar as well. And then we are working on the 8th grade celebration. I don't know what the date is, but the chair might. I know last meeting, Mr. Harris was trying to figure out, based on the construction schedule, when the building or when the space we needed would be available for the 8th grade graduation. So we'll certainly announce that and start planning for that. We were supposed to have a spring photo fundraiser, but our photographer is not able to do it. So if we can find a photographer, if anyone is a photographer or is friends with a photographer who would be interested in doing a spring photo fundraiser, please reach out. We're happy to, advertise that and support that. And, we'd be excited about it. So we'll just see if we can make that happen. And then our other big thing that we have is we're at this meeting supposed to vote for a nominating committee. I have not gotten anyone who wants to be on the nominating committee. So if there's somebody who's here who wants to be on the nominating committee, please let us know. But we need a 3-person committee so that we can elect a new board. We have the entire board is parents of 8th graders. And so we are all moving on to Woodson. And so we need to elect a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer. And so we're supposed to do that at the May meeting. So if, we need a nominating committee, and if anyone on this call is interested in any of the positions, please let us know. We're happy to talk about our position and give you all the information that you need. All right, so we don't currently have, I don't know if, again, is there anyone here? So Karen, thank you. We will definitely follow up. Is there anyone who wants to be on the nominating committee? If not, it will likely be 3 of the 4 current board members. Okay, well, we'll table that. We have a form that we have to vote on to submit to the PTA, like the Virginia PTA. I can share my screen. I think we're just going to go ahead and vote on that because it's a compliance issue. Like, we have to send that in. Oh, I don't. All right, I'm trying to. Ms. Champ, I sent you the form about 10 minutes ago. Are you able to share it on your screen?
Sure, you sent it via email?
Yes.
Okay,
wait,
give me a
so,
moment. Let me check my email.
Oh, wait, you know what? I got it. Sorry, I
Okay.
had so many documents open. It was.
No worries.
So this form is just like basic stuff about our PTA and our school and what officers we have on our board and how long their terms are, the amount of consecutive terms that they can hold, information about the executive committee and the executive board, which we got from our bylaws, information about general membership meetings, again, that's from our bylaws, and then the information about nominations and elections from our bylaws. So apparently we have to approve this form so that we can send it to the PTA. So can I have a motion to vote on this form?
I move to vote.
All right. Do we need to second that? Can somebody second that?
I'll second it.
All right. Thank you. And I can't, oh, I'm sharing my screen. So if somebody can actually see better in the chat, if you are a member of the PTA, if you can please vote in this, all 4, I guess if you can use your, let me stop sharing so I can vote. I guess if you vote for, can you use your like little green check box? And if you go into reactions. And then if you, please don't vote against the form, but if you really wanted to vote against the form, if you can use the little red X. And if you're somehow not on the screen, if you can just maybe do a voice vote.
I'm trying to vote yes, but I don't see the little reactions that you're talking about. So yes for Pam.
Okay, so we have.
That's same for David.
Okay, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, David's on.
5, 6, 7. All right, I got 7 yes votes. Okay, anyone voting against my form? All right, well, I'm gonna have to somehow find 3 more people to vote yes, but we'll capture these 7 yeses and I'll hunt people down, I guess, this week. So thank you for that. And we'll have to come back to the nominating committee. I think we're gonna have to figure something out. We were not planning to have an April meeting, but we may have to schedule a special meeting to get a nominating committee together. So we'll table that for now. So Ms. Champ, have I given you enough time? Are you ready?
Of course I am.
Awesome, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing great. Thank you so much for the hard work that you're doing. Because listening to what Ms. Pugsley's saying, it doesn't sound like it's a lot of people, but with a few people, you definitely are doing a lot of work. So just some things I wanted to share that Mr. Harris reminded me about. So today was the first day of optional masking. So he did actually a great message to the student body and the staff this morning around 7:45, just about, this is everyone's right. Whatever each person or each student or each staff member chooses. We're not doing any shaming, and we need to respect each other's right to wear one or not to wear one. He shared that we're one frost, and that's the way we're going to stay. He really did, and I have to reiterate, he really did stress, like, we're not doing any shaming, we're not doing any, we're not calling out anyone, or whatever anyone wants to do, that's their right. Since he had the whole student body on, he also took the opportunity to review some behavior expectations. And he shared that, you know, right now they should be looking at the next grade, because if you're a 7th grader, you're almost done with 7th grade. So now you should be acting like an 8th grader. If you're an 8th grader, you should be having the mindset, I'm moving on to high school. So that's how I'm supposed to be behaving. He also talked about cell phone expectations, because, you know, this year we did allow cell phones in the cafeteria. So he also talked about how during transitions, those cell phones need to be off and away in classroom, only if teacher allows it for maybe instructional purposes, if not off and away in your book bag. So he reminded the student body about that. So he did mention about the tar. So I'm not sure if you were aware, it was a smell. So next week, they're going to begin back to putting tar on a roof. But when speaking to those in renovation, they said that somehow they're going to put some type of additive in it, and hopefully that would decrease on the smell. Just as a reminder, Thursday, there is a 2-hour early release. And on Friday, there's no school for students. That's a teacher planning day. And there's also their training. So they're going to be doing some training on equity and some other personalized trainings that they might have. I think that was it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, these calendar days off take me by surprise. I feel like I have like 3 days notice, like, oh, right, this is, you know, this is a day off. So thank you for that reminder as well. All right, Pam.
Hello. I want to just say a quick word about the Frost Family Festival. Thank you guys so much, everybody who was there, participated. We just had the most amazing feedback. I think people were just excited to kind of be back and be back in the school. And we had a pretty successful fundraiser for that. We raised almost $700, cleared almost $700, which was way more than we expected for the first outing. So that was very great from our side as well. As far as spirit wear goes, most of our stuff is online still with Squad Locker, but we have, since I'm filling in for the spirit wear person, we've ventured into magnets and lanyards. So the magnets are now available. We had them at the Family Festival, and now they're online at PT Board. So I've already started selling those, and then the lanyard order has been sent. So hopefully in a few weeks we'll have that, and we'll put those available on PT Board as well. So that's coming around the corner. I guess the next thing is the spring grant presentation. First, we still have 2 grants that are still in progress from the fall. I'm sorry, 3. We had 2 half-year ones and 3 full-year ones. So we've got 3 that are still working under the fall grants. And then we've got, let's see if I can share my screen here. I'm technologically challenged. We have 6. Let me see if I can pull them up. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay, hang on 1 second. There we go.
Yep, it's
You
starting.
see now? Okay.
Yep.
I had a meeting with Mr. Harris last week where he looked at these and went ahead and gave his verbal approval, but obviously we need to take a vote on whether everyone here approves. Of course, every year we have several different grants from the library. So this is the foreign language collection. In the Spanish department, there's just a couple small ones. Quizlet and Apples to Apples for her class, and then a weather station. So that's pretty easy one. The next one, most of you are familiar with Mr. Gardio's the NEST program, the CSS positive reinforcement that she does. This is a supplement. The $600 is a supplement to the fall grant that she already has based on her funding needs. Oh, sorry about that. I went too far. If you go to the next one, she's also put in a different request for pedal bikes for $1,000 for the sensory movement equipment. So there's those. If you need me to slow down or you have any specific questions about any of these, I can certainly go through them with you. There's a lot there. And then the last one is one that we pretty much always have every spring. We're one of the, I think, only schools in the county that actually still, as part of their family consumer sciences program, actually has sewing as one of their options. So we do the annual sewing machine maintenance. Obviously, last year we were virtual, so we did not do it last year. Cost has gone up a little bit this year, but it's been something that actually that classes looks forward to every year. So that's our last grant request. If you look at the numbers there, this brings us a teeny bit over our budget at 398.52 over. I talked with Mr. Harris about that. Of course, he wanted all of the grants, so he was fine with that little bit, but obviously puts us over budget. So we would need to take a vote on, first of all, are there any questions about the grants? And we need to approve the grants first, and then I would also need a motion to approve the change in budget to accommodate the deficit.
All right, are we making a motion? I'm all right. I move to vote on the making up the deficit and this, and I guess we have to do one thing at a time, or can we do them all at once, Pam?
I don't know. I don't know what the bylaw says, but I'm fine with doing them both at one time.
We're going rogue. Let's do them both at once. All right, so I move to vote on the spring grant and the making up the deficit. Can anyone second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Karen. All right, so yes, let's use our little voting buttons. And then for those of you who are not able to use your voting, but it should be under reactions. Do you have, and Pam, if you're sharing your screen, you might not even be able to see.
Should I go
it.
ahead and stop sharing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you find, it's at the bottom. It's like the reaction with like the smiley face with the little sign. So if you click on that, then there's all sorts of options. So you're looking for the green circle with the check mark.
Pam, but Pam can also just say she's in favor.
Yeah. Or you can do a thumbs up.
Clearly, I'm in favor of both.
Yes, sorry,
Thank
I just
you.
have to count. So hold on, if I can see it. It's hard to count and scroll. I'm just gonna say that.
I see 7.
Okay. I'm gonna go with plus Pam, so is that 8? So I think that might be 8.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone opposed? Can use your little red circle. All right. So thank you. So I guess we'll have to find 2 people to vote on that and the local unit form, but we can just take a walk down my street and wrangle some PTA members. Okay, so we got that. Anything else, Pam?
That's all I had, unless anyone had any questions about the grants. I'm good.
All right, well, thank you, because those are all great projects. And I think there's also a sewing club. So even if you're not taking facts this semester, the kids that are doing sewing club are also benefiting from that one.
Sure.
All right, treasurer's report.
Okay, does someone have the report that I sent earlier that they could share? I'll only take up a minute or 2.
Yeah, Ms. Champ, do you have it, or I can pull it up as well?
Is that in the email you sent me?
It is. I'll pull it up. If you just 1 second. I just have to open it. My Microsoft Word takes a while. It's got a lot of thinking it needs to do.
Is it the local structure unit organization?
No, it's the treasurer report. I'll get it. Just yeah, just hold on 1 second. Sorry, I have so many screens open. Oh, here we go. All right. David, can you see it?
I
Or-
can see it. For those of you who need to, if it's too small, I think you can just pinch your screen, or I can do it on my phone. But so just a quick update. I won't take too long. The January numbers were, I believe it was maybe 3 new memberships that came in January. February had a lot more activity, obviously, with the Frost Family Festival, with the Mardi Gras fundraising, and other things. Things you will not see here, if you notice that there's no Mardi Gras fundraiser tally, because the expenses have not come in yet, nor the in-person check and cash donations or collections. So that will appear in the March report. As you can see here, as Pam had mentioned earlier, the Frost Family Festival cleared. It looks like we took in about 1,200, and then there were some expenses for the pizza and such. So I think it was actually closer to about 800, including all the donations and things like that. The Frost car magnets, obviously you can see here that they are kind of gaining momentum. So we had some of those sold. Hopefully we'll get more traction in March. The biggest expense, as you can see, like I mentioned, is the Frost Family Pizza, and then the car magnets that we had to lay out for purchasing those that we'll hopefully be able to sell. If you scroll
We'll be
down a
able to
little
sell
bit.
Yep.
I just made a couple notes. The bank account balances are not showing in this month's report because there are a lot of transactions that have not cleared through Apple Bank yet. So I just want to make sure those clear so I can get an accurate bank account balance. So that'll show up in the March report. And then, like I mentioned, the Mardi Gras fundraiser updates will be provided during next month, because the total tallies of those have not been summed up yet either. And I just want to reiterate, if you have grant requests or reimbursements that you need, please get those to me as soon as possible. I think I received one recently. I usually try and get those turned around in a week or 2 at most. It requires 2 signatures. There's some additional time that's required to get those out and mailed out. So try and get those out to sent to the treasurer's email address as soon as possible. I need receipts and the reimbursement form. Any questions?
Nothing for me.
Okay, that's all I had.
All right, thanks, David.
Mhm.
All right, and then we've got February meeting minutes to approve. So let me pull those up and then I'll share my screen. All right, Suzanne, do you want to walk through those? Or-
Let me unmute myself. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. Mr. Harris briefed us on everything going on at the school with the renovation and the screener about emotional health for kids. He recognized the reflections winners from Frost on the theme, "I will change the world by." He talked a bit about academic advising, the students meeting with their counselors. And I mentioned the renovation already. Allison filled us in on the fundraisers going on. We heard about the readathon from Julie Mindy. Pam briefed us on plans for the Frost Family Festival and Spirit Wear, and explained that the grant program for the fall is still underway, and of course spring was pending. David gave the treasurer's report. We approved minutes from December, and then there was some brief discussion about upcoming events such as bingo night, 8th grade celebration, award ceremonies, etc. We heard plans from Trish Ramirez, the hospitality chair, about ways to recognize the counselors and for Counselor Appreciation Week, and also treats for Valentine's Day for teachers and staff.
All right. I move to approve the meeting minutes from February. Do we get a second?
I can second that.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna stop share so that I can vote. All right. Do our, oh, sorry, I keep voting and unvoting because I'm, okay. So yeah, so everyone just voted at the same time. So our checkbox for yes, our X for no.
I'm voting yes again for,
We appreciate your vote, Pam.
very welcome.
So I think we should be, oh, we've got Gloria now. Excellent. We might be, are we at 9? I can't. All right. I'm saying we're at 9 yes and 0 no. And while we have Gloria, so, and then we will get to Dr. Zabel. So thank you for being patient with us here, Dr. Zabel. Gloria, so I gave that we have a date for bingo night. I don't know if there's anything else to be shared for bingo night at this point. I basically said more information will be forthcoming, but if you have any spoilers for us, we'd love to hear them.
I'll just add that we've got some great prizes, including a Nintendo Switch and lots
Oh,
of
wow.
gift certificates that were left, that we're carrying over from 2021 when bingo night was canceled. So we're starting out in a really strong position with that. And I'll put a call for volunteers out on the Facebook page for people who want to join a planning committee. I've finished up the plan. So I think it will be a great event.
Excellent, thank you. You had my son's interest at Nintendo Switch.
Nice.
You never know when you need an extra one. All right, thank you. Okay, so I think at this point, we are ready to hear from Dr. Zabel. And so hopefully you can share your screen.
Just if I may jump in.
Oh, yeah.
Should we ask for Gloria's vote in
Oh,
favor
yeah.
of the grants? Gloria, we're trying to
Yeah.
reach a quorum and we haven't quite gotten there yet. So we did some voting already and didn't quite have the votes we needed. So
Yes, I'll vote yes. I'm sorry for coming in late. I had something
we're
come up.
glad you're here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We're
we'll
glad
take your
you're
vote on. Okay, so on the spring grants, you'll vote yes.
yes.
And then we had to fill out a form to send to the PTA. Can you vote yes on the awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Excellent.
I'd be happy to introduce Dr. Zabel if we're at that part. Hi, Dr. Zabel. Thanks so much for joining us. We were so happy to have you speak to the PTA in the past. And there are new families among us, and there's always new to learn about when behaviors are concerning. So we're happy to have you here today and also to have Ms. Babaturk with us as well. Thanks for joining. So Dr. Zabel, most of you probably know her already. She has a lot of accomplishments and accolades, but she has been a school psychologist for the past 12 years and has been at Frost for 5 years. She has noted that one of her favorite leadership opportunities has been the Frost Minds Matter program. And all of us who are involved in the PTA love to support it through the grants program. So we're always excited to hear about the accomplishment that that club is doing. And I wonder if you're, now I'm off topic, but if you're still taking new members, because I really think my daughter would enjoy it. And I'm so trying to nudge her along to get involved with that. She does that along with Mr. Lantis, and I think you all meet weekly, right? And I mean, obviously you can tell us much more about it than I can, but in reading your bio, that really struck me as something that seems like a big highlight to you. Ms. Babaturk is here now as an intern, and she's a doctoral student at the University of Maryland, College Park, and I think she's really interested in supporting adolescents. And that's why Frost would be a good fit. So thank you for joining us, and we're excited to hear what you have to say tonight.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for having us. I know I really always enjoy presenting to the PTA. I am an active member of PTA, and thank you always for funding our grants for Frost Minds Matter. And of course, I will talk a little bit about them because this is our first year in person. So we've been doing lots of really fun things. And yes, Ms. Babaturk is with me. I run her around the building all day when she's with me. So she's been a great asset to our program. And I know you've all been up early with your teens. So we're going to try and get through this. But do know that we absolutely enjoy this topic. Oops, let me see. Something just happened on my screen there. Can you all still see?
So we can see you sharing your screen.
Okay, I just gotta make my screen a little bit bigger here. My view got a little bit strange. But yeah, I've been at Frost the last 5 years. I really enjoy it. I feel very spoiled to be working at Frost every day. I work with the most incredible educators, and we really couldn't do what we do without the support of our administration, and our teachers are just unbelievably flexible with the things we ask them to do to support our kids' mental health. I have worked in many schools, and I do feel that it is a privilege to be working with this wonderful staff and this wonderful PTA, because we have a pretty big PTA that supports a lot of the work that we do as well. So what we're going to be talking about a little bit today, if you've been in my presentations before, I absolutely choose to work in middle school. My early career was in early childhood and elementary, which I absolutely loved. But I think my passion is with middle schoolers because it is such a challenging time, as you all know. And if this is your first time through middle school, it's always like a roller coaster. We say just hold on because there's a lot of changes that occur. And it's hard to really know when kids are experiencing typical development and typical adolescence versus something that we should be more concerned about. So tonight we're going to kind of go through what typical social emotional development looks like. Again, I'm not as proficient with Zoom. So Ms. Babaturk is going to take us through more of that social emotional piece, what we expect with kids at this age. And again, you're going to be like, wait, doesn't that seem a little bit atypical? But a lot of things that kids experience at this time seems abnormal, but there are a lot of interesting changes that occur. And I'm going to kind of bring us into when we should be concerned, or maybe some red flags and things that you might notice with your children, and next steps. What do you do if you are noticing those things? There are other really significant cognitive and physical changes, as you all know, also occurring with our kids. So we're really just focusing on that social emotional piece tonight. But do know that they are going through a lot of physical changes. Their brains are changing. Sometimes I tell my students, like, your brains are changing so much, and your parents are going to like, and your teachers are going to be like, oh, stop challenging me. But it's actually a pretty typical. So we'll go through some of that tonight. And if after tonight you have more questions, I am at the school full time, so I'm happy to answer any questions or point you in the right direction in terms of what would be supportive. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Babaturk, and I'm going to fix my screen a little bit while we're doing that. She's going to take us through that typical development in terms of social emotional skills.
Hello, yes. So I'll start with what typical development looks like. So adolescence is a challenging time in general, even under the best of circumstances, but behaviors do serve a purpose. So children are dependent on parents for most of their needs, and then this shifts in adolescence, and that's to help them develop into healthy, independent adults with a secure sense of identity and the ability to think effectively through problems in life. And so the majority of teens handle this transition without too much difficulty. However, the rapid physical, psychological, and social changes that occur during adolescence can be really stressful and put teens at risk for developing mental health difficulties. And most psychiatric disorders first emerge during the adolescent years, but because so much change is happening so quickly, it can be difficult for parents to detect problems when they arise and to know what's normal and what might be a sign of a more serious concern. So to adults, the concerns that teens deal with sometimes can seem like small and insignificant. So you might be thinking like over a lifetime, there will be other friends, there are other girlfriends, other teens. But to teens, these first steps at independence can feel really risky and uncertain. And so it can be tempting for teens to not take chances and to stay kind of behind in the comforts of childhood. And that's also a time where like their identity is kind of neatly determined by their role in the family. But this does put teens at risk for dependency and insecurity, so kind of like a failure to launch. And to get started on this challenging process, teens might give themselves a nudge, which can take the form of rejecting their parents' values or their parents' worldview. And that can sometimes look like actively rebelling against the rules parents have set, but that is typical in development.
I actually talked with a parent today. They're really cute. They're like, yeah, my son comes home and he never tells me anything that happens in his school day. And I was like, that's actually pretty normal. But Miss Babaturk and I always kind of hear, they do share the information, but sometimes they aren't always sharing all of that with their parents. Okay. Again, are you all seeing the screen okay?
Yes, we are.
Okay, perfect.
So then I'll talk about developing a sense of identity. So in adolescence, children start to look to their peer group as a source of beliefs and values outside of their family. So really it's shifting from their parents to their peers. And early adolescence, where our 7th and 8th graders at Frost are at, is very focused on finding one's place in a group. And so teens are typically most concerned with being popular, fitting in, and they're most anxious about being an outcast. And you might observe changes in friendships, or they might observe that too from elementary school, and that can be distressing to some students to have their friends be changing. And also being a member in a group in early adolescence is really important. It helps them build confidence later in life, especially when they need to interact with different groups of people as adults. It's also the time where romantic relationships first emerge, and when most people have their first experience with relationships. So for some teens, it can even be a period of questioning and figuring out their sexuality, which can be a stressful experience. Individuals might have fears regarding their sexuality or gender roles, and acceptance can make some adolescents more vulnerable. Oh, I'm sorry. They might have fears about acceptance. And that can make them more vulnerable to depression, suicidal thoughts, and mental illness. But a supportive home environment can help mitigate a lot of this vulnerability. There's also a strong drive to experiment, and it's paired with a sense of grandiosity and invulnerability. And the experimentation might look like new styles of music or clothing, or risk-taking behaviors like sexual behaviors or behaviors involving drugs and breaking the law. And teens also have a limited capacity to fully grasp the risks that they're taking and the consequences of their behaviors. And this part of their brain is still developing. And I actually remember learning in one of my college classes, like a Psych 100 class or something like that, that this is actually one of the last parts of the brain to develop. And that kind of fact always stuck with me, that it's developing up until you're like in your 20s. So all of those things together can create a perfect storm. So they're taking risks, they're not really able to think about the consequences of those risks. So just to sum up really quick, being rebellious, taking risks, and acting impulsively are all behaviors that are viewed as normal and a healthy part of development during this time period. However, teens do require adequate supervision, and so clear expectations and firm caring limits from parents can help keep them safe. They might not like what they're hearing from parents, but such limits are usually perceived as signs of loving protection. And while limits must be set on unsafe behaviors, parents can also appreciate that experimentation is essential to them developing their own sense of a personal identity. So that kind of exploration is developmentally appropriate. And by trying out different interests, teens are gradually assembling a clearer picture of themselves. And so now we'll move into talking about, with all of that going on, how are you supposed to realize if there is a problem?
Yeah, and when we work with students, like I always tell my students, we don't, teach classes, but like our door is kind of open throughout the day. And so kids come in with various issues, or just to share like good things that are happening, or just anything throughout the day. we do do a lot of psychoeducation with the kids, that sometimes the things that they are experiencing are pretty normal, because sometimes they feel very much like, "Oh, I don't know what to do with these big feelings, or I'm feeling stressed and should I be worried?" And our students do tend to feel better when they've had lessons in health and PE, or when we talk about, that's actually a really cool sign that's showing that you're able to think about things in a different way, or you're feeling like this pressure here from peers, is because you can think about things differently than maybe you could in elementary school. And really that piece, like I was teasing, like sometimes our kids don't come home and talk to us about what they're dealing with on a daily basis, but they do hear you and they do understand. Maybe they don't say like, "Yeah, thanks mom, thanks dad, I appreciate your advice," but they do know when they're cared for and they have that supervision. So just keep talking to your kids, because they do hear you, even though they act like sometimes they're not paying attention. But there is, like Ms. Babaturk was saying, a lot of things going on. So how are you supposed to know, like, is this a problem or is this just typical adolescence? And once we kind of turn into adults, we have a hard time remembering sometimes some of the things we experienced as adolescents, but I can guarantee that we all kind of went through a lot of these things in middle school and later adolescence and high school. So it can be difficult to distinguish when things are maybe going awry. When a student is struggling with mental health concerns, though, however, we usually can observe difficulties in more than one setting. So maybe it isn't just at home, or it isn't just at school. We might see it across the board in their social relationships in home and at school. And I'll kind of take us through what are some of our typical red flags. So things we might see or first notice are typically things in the home setting. That's where our kids are most comfortable. We saw a lot of these things, especially during the pandemic, because parents were home with their kids for the most part. So they really were observing a lot more things, and it was a very atypical time period. But things we might see are dramatic changes in mood and behavior. So more frequent angry and explosive outbursts, a lot of irritability at this age. I think that's kind of like the name of the game. We may see decreased motivation, some unpredictable behaviors. I always tell Ms. Babaturk, we don't have a lot on our agenda for today because everything is unpredictable. We may have a couple meetings scheduled, but for the most part, our kids kind of do what they're going to do, and we're going to respond to what their needs are. And you may see also persistent feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, where they may be things that you are seeing as potential red flags. A lot of our mental health disorders are manifested through physical symptoms. So this is also things we see, things like fatigue, disturbances in sleep or appetite. And that could be too much sleep or too little sleep. And same thing with appetite, where our kids are not hungry versus like eating constantly, increases or decreases in weight. A lot of frequent physical complaints that maybe don't have a medical explanation. So a lot of stomach aches, headaches, things of that nature, maybe refusing to come to school. That is something I think we're seeing a definite uptick with our students, is just being present in the school building, and being a student again has been a huge adjustment. But at home, you may see just withdrawal from family and friends, things of that nature. Just that isolation, even though privacy is kind of a newer thing that develops at this age, but that complete isolation from others is definitely a warning sign. We also see changes maybe in self-care. So bathing, wearing unclean clothes may be a sign of some mental distress or a more developing problem. We also may see concerns about safety, and I know we take that very seriously at Frost and as school teams, and even our teachers have been very well trained in terms of what to look for, what kids may be writing. I think our staff are pretty, I would say just very excellent. Sometimes they over-report just because they're not quite sure and they don't want to let things go in terms of things they might be seeing or hearing from students. We also have a very caring culture in terms of our students at Frost, that we do a lot of work around our signs of suicide and our ACT lessons. I know the counselors do an excellent job, and we kind of support that during the month of October in terms of acknowledging an issue, caring for a friend, and telling an adult when maybe something doesn't seem right. So we do see at this age, we may have some concerns around self-harm or cutting, more aggressive behaviors. And we do a lot of risk assessments in our schools in terms of suicidal thoughts, behaviors, and getting families connected to the supports that they need. So these kinds of unsafe behaviors that we may see, self-harm is different than suicidal thoughts, but we do take all those things seriously. So if you're seeing those things at home, definitely don't ignore those. Those are usually signs that there might be a more significant issue occurring. At school, some of our indicators are things like their grades, our students' grades may be decreasing. We may see poor attendance. We may see an uptick in some of the disciplinary problems or peer conflicts, or just things in terms of following school rules and expectations. And then again, that third area in terms of their social functioning, we may see increased isolation. We may see an avoidance of activities. I always talk about this with our students because a lot of times our kids have been in elementary school for so long. You're like, oh, I played the cello my whole life, and now I'm in I'm in middle school and I'm not so interested in that anymore. And I always tell them, like, sometimes that's totally fine, because when you're in middle school, you might have different experiences, you might have different interests, and it's okay to explore those things. And it's definitely okay to talk to your parents about things if you're like, I don't want to play soccer anymore. I don't know if I want to do this. I want to try and explore other opportunities. Where we tend to get more concerned is when maybe our kids stop doing things that they've been doing for a long time and they really have nothing else to replace that activity. So we try, maybe we don't want to play the cello anymore, but maybe we want to try this other thing. That's more typical than maybe just not doing anything. And we sometimes see that our kids do change peer groups at this age, but when our kids tend to identify with groups that maybe are getting into a little bit more trouble, that can be a sign that maybe they're trying to connect and maybe struggling with some other mental health issues. All right, so like I was saying before, many of these signs may be a part of healthy adolescent development. The difference between normal development and developing more mental health issues is really the degree. And we tend to see that these issues will cause multiple problems in across settings. So again, it's not really just school or just at home. We tend to see that it will permeate and kind of cross a couple of different settings. One of the examples I like to give here is, like, our kids definitely get into a lot of peer conflicts at this age. A typical reaction might be, I got in a fight with my friend, and then they spend the weekend kind of like, oh, not doing anything or contacting any friends, or just kind of moping around and feeling kind of down and out, and are spending more time at home. When it may be more atypical is like we see that maybe our kiddo is staying home for weeks and they're really isolating, and they're maybe not spending any time with family members. We might also see that they're having a hard time concentrating at school, so their grades begin to drop. So you can see across that there's a social issue. Maybe we see some difficulties at home in terms of interacting with their families, and then we start to see at school it's starting to impact them. And that's when we have more of like, ooh, maybe we need some additional support in terms of how we're supporting our kiddo. So most of the time what we see with our kids is that with typical development, it's a short-lived, it's like, this issue occurred. I always tell my students, because sometimes like something will happen, like, oh, everybody's talking about it. And I said, well, just give it some time, because eventually our kids will find something else to grab onto. And then there's like a new thing. And our kids generally are pretty resilient, and then they can bounce back and move on. But what we tend to see with our kids that develop more mental health issues is that it is more persistent. Again, we will see like those symptoms across settings, and without the right support, sometimes those things can get worse. But I always do also tell my students that you are at a young age, a lot of these things are treatable, but we got to be ready to experience that change and work through it. It's hard work, and we do it every day with our kids. And I always also tell my students, like, you're going to really hate me sometimes because I'm going to push you to do things that I know are outside your comfort zone, but are going to be important. So most of my day, I'll be honest, is with kids that struggle with mental health issues. It's not always that I get kids without some needs coming through my door. I do enjoy that though, but that's usually where we are trying to do a lot of work, is that they're experiencing pretty frequent difficulties and across settings, and they're just having a hard time kind of recovering from setbacks that happen throughout the school day and at home, and just with their social relationships. All right, so we're gonna kind of move in. I'm kind of going a little quickly because I know everyone's got to go to bed because your teen's got to wake up at like 5 tomorrow to catch the bus. But again, like I said, I'm always happy to answer questions and talk about this topic. But now we're going to kind of get into next steps. How do I help my child? If I am concerned, what can I do next? We do have some information about protective factors. I always like to start there because there's a lot of things that families and communities and schools are doing that really help kids be resilient. And FCPS, for nearly like the last 2 decades, we've had this campaign for 3 to Succeed. And we do the Fairfax Youth Survey every year, or I should say it's with our 6th, 8th, and 10th graders. And I think I do it again, I want to say in 11th or 12th grade. But really what it's looking at is those protective factors, things that when kids have these in their lives, they're more likely to be successful and healthy adults. And it's things like having caring adults. I know at Frost, we take very seriously, like that every child has a trusted adult in the building. And it doesn't have to be a teacher, it doesn't have to be a clinician, just that there's somebody that they connect with. And we definitely do a lot of work around those kiddos that maybe don't have somebody, and we provide a lot of interventions and supports to make sure that our kids have that. And it can be also things like participating in community extracurricular activities. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about our after school program, but there's so many things that families do that really protect kids from developing some of these mental health challenges that we're talking about tonight. And I probably, just to spare you some time, there is a video and I'll send this out so you can kind of watch what those things are. And when kids have at least 3 of those protective factors in their lives, they are significantly less likely to engage in risky behaviors, have difficulties with the law, all sorts of things. So we really try and promote that in our schools. And I think Frost does an exceptional job of making sure every kid has somebody. And I know Mr. Harris is really wonderful in terms of the way he sets the tone for our school, and that we are that one Frost community that every child feels like they belong. So in your spare time, you can kind of watch this quick little video about that. But these factors do last into adulthood. So building those strategies and making those connections with kids is really worth the time and the money that it takes to do that. So I'll leave it there, but I will, of course, do a shameless plug for our club that we, Mr. Lantis and I do strive really hard to make one of those protective factors our after school club, which is Frost Minds Matter. And this is how we kind of started virtually. And I love this because this is like our very first title and like how we kind of started our club in the virtual world. And we've just kind of evolved over time. We've created our mission statement with our students in terms of what our goal is for Frost Minds Matter. We really try to create those safe spaces for social connectedness. We try to foster healthy identity development. We really strive, and I give this to Mr. Lantis, to be our authentic selves, even when we're having a hard time or having a bad day. We share that with kids. We model that for students. But we also promote a lot of appropriate mental health resources and how to use positive coping to get through those things. Again, we kind of started this virtually, so it's definitely evolved over time as we've been in person. But we always talk about our kids being mentally well so that they can give back to their community, their school environment, and they've really grasped onto that and really taken that to a new level that we couldn't even experience. But we felt like at the time when we started this club, it was always super important to us in terms of our beliefs around mental health. But when we were experiencing like the COVID-19 pandemic and we're doing virtual school, that's really where we were like, this is extremely important. And now that our kids are returning to school after that, we feel like this club is definitely a protective factor and an important part of our work at school. And like Mrs. Fitch was saying, like, it's definitely a passion project for us. And we spend a lot of our time promoting it and talking about it with kids and trying to normalize mental health difficulties, because I think our kids, even if they don't struggle with mental health, they do feel an enormous amount of stress and pressure to perform. And so we like to be able to express the importance of self-care and helping others to help improve your mental health. So some of these Bitmojis are just us being silly, but we have a lot of fun around that. Here's some of the things we do. And again, I just love talking about this club, and I can talk about it endlessly because like I said, it is a passion project. We do have a very routine kind of format. We always have like an opening connection where our kids get together, they kind of get settled in, and they have like an opening question or some way to connect with each other about their day. We always have a group activity, and we end with a kindness challenge or some sort of closing little events, which includes inspirational quotes and reminders and different things for our club meeting. We have special features for students. So we kind of look for special talents and interests that they may have and promote that. So we have like a fun fact time. We have some other special segments like DJ time. Art segment is a really popular thing that we do. And we were also able to like have some outdoor activities last school year. And what we were kind of hearing during the pandemic was a lot of kids saying how much they missed their childhood. They felt like they were missing out somehow. So we met weekly, and that was like one of our first, this one here where I'm like, that was our club meeting, was me and a laptop with Mr. Lantis. And we were always surprised like how the kids would, you know, spend all day on the computer, and then they would log in and want to support each other and talk through things. And Alex and I always talk about like, we have these little tiny small ideas about like, oh, maybe we should do something around gratitude. And our kids always take it to the next level, and they want to support one another. And they connect with kids that maybe they don't have classes with. And it's, you know, like I was saying earlier, like it gives me access to students that I don't always get an opportunity to work with, but they truly are an inclusive group of kids, with some kids with special needs, some kids without, and they really just wrap around this mission of mental health matters and our voices are important, and how do we help give back to our school community. So they truly are inspiring. And I think that's what keeps us going even during this really difficult time where we're trying to return to like normal after this period. So it's been a real pleasure being able to see them in person now in action. And we've just had a couple of really great things this year. And again, I'm just going to brag just a little and then I'll move us along. But we were able to, and I should say all of our work is sponsored by the Our Minds Matter movement, which is a larger high school inspired curriculum. And we have been a pilot school for the last 2 years, one of the first middle schools to bring the Our Minds Matter curriculum to middle school. Mr. Lantis and I have had the opportunity to write some of the curriculum for our middle school students. We've gotten some nice awards from the Our Minds Matter Foundation. And this year we were featured in their gala, which was wonderful. We were the middle school showcase. So these are just some pictures there. We had a really fun time going to DC, sharing our work with other clubs and other sponsors. And Mr. Harris was there. This was kind of our group shot. So we had a lot of kids that were able to come out that night to talk about our club and all the things that we've been doing. And they have this every year as a way to raise money and funds for the organization. So we were just happy to be a part of that. And I think the big thing that our kids really wanted to do was to share what we do in our club meetings every week and bring it to the larger school community. And that really is the mission of the larger Our Minds Matter, is to change the culture around mental health. So when we got back in person, the kids that were with us last year, they were saying like, I loved everything we did virtually, but now that we're back, let's bring this to the school. So our kids have, again, kind of changed a lot and like provided a lot, even during this renovation and this very strange time about returning to school. So we've hosted a lot of school-wide events in a short amount of time. We're all kind of a little tired, but we keep going because it gives us joy and keeps us motivated. So this heart little picture here up in the corner, we did a gratitude challenge where we challenged every kid during lunch. We spent a lot of time in the cafeteria asking kids to share what they were grateful for, and we entered them into a raffle. And we were just really getting out this idea that by thinking about those things that we're grateful for, it improves our mental health, because it makes us stop and reflect and think about, all the good things that are happening. And then we created this big, large heart art thing, art exhibit that's like in the middle of our crazy renovated hallway. But kids really stop and they look at it and they want to see like, it is pretty overwhelming when you see the kinds of things that kids would write. I mean, some kids were silly and we're like, oh, like that's a silly thing. But for the most part, they really did stop and think about what is something that I'm grateful for during this time. So it was very moving. And when you put them all together like that, and it's a pretty large art display, we were just really proud of the work that they were able to do. And students really jumped on that and helped us with that. We also have been started doing some lessons in Falcon Focus time and turned the intervention time so that we get the message out. And that was one of our student leaders, that was their idea. They said, we want to talk about mental health in all of our homerooms because that's what's important. So they created lessons and we were able to bring that to kids and also do some challenges there. Down in that left-hand corner, we did our food drive and partnered with our Food for Thought program, which probably a lot of you helps support. So we raised over $700 in gift cards. We collected way over $2,000 2,000 non-perishable food items, and the kids were just helping sort and get it together and make sure that our Frost families that maybe struggled during the pandemic or during the winter break had food and enough things to eat. So they really gave back in that way. And then the past month, we did our Friendship February month, where we partnered with other clubs to, again, bring some of the things we've been learning back to the community. So we recently partnered with our unified sports team, and then we did a hot cocoa event during lunch, which I was teasing if Miss Champ is still here. A lot of the administrators were like, oh my gosh, you made everyone all hyped up at lunch, but they were really excited to like win and like be a part of that event. So those are some of our kids that helped out. They were on the microphone calling out names. They helped put together all those goodies for kids. So that was just like something fun we could bring. We did a self-care like bingo challenge, which we're still working through. So the winning picture will be featured in the school newspaper. We also, you can kind of see in that upper right-hand corner, partnered with Miss Morgan, who does our SGA, and Miss Gibbous, who runs our student ambassadors program. We helped partner and do the friendship grams for the Valentine's Day kind of event. And then, sorry, again, the last thing, I'm sorry, I could brag about them all the time because I just really am so proud of their efforts. That chalk art, we had that one beautiful day last week on Wednesday where it was like 70 degrees in the middle of February. So we went outside with sidewalk chalk. We had outdoor game time. We again partnered with Unified Sports, and we just put positive messages all through the scrape. And that was actually an actual piece of art that we did. It did rain later the next day, but it's things like that where we're trying to help kids see that what they do makes a difference and that their ideas matter. So we've just had a lot of fun this year going from that virtual, even though we were like, gosh, they're so inspiring, even every week on the computer, to see them now in person, what they're able to do is just, I think that's what keeps Alex and I really going, is seeing the difference that these kids can make. So having your kids join these after school clubs is definitely a protective factor. They do not have to just join our club. We would love to have them, and you can join at any time. I always tell our students, we want you at every meeting, but we also understand you're busy kids. So we want you just involved somewhere, and our kids do get out kind of early. So, if you're connected in extracurricular activities, that is definitely something that helps our kids be resilient. We do have a Schoology group, so I have that here if you want to take a picture of it. We meet every Wednesday at 2:30. We also have an active Twitter account that kind of keeps parents updated. Our kids aren't really on Twitter or have as much social media. So we kind of do that more for like families and our school teams. But I also put here our contact information for Deb Metzger, who is our after school coordinator. She does an exceptional job in terms of supporting our program, but we have something for kids every single day. And when I talk to some of my colleagues in different schools, sometimes that isn't always the case. We do have late buses for kids, but they can walk home or get picked up at any point. But we do have a pretty robust program. And I always tell our students too that if there's a club we don't have and you want to have it, Miss Metzger is really great about finding that sponsor so that you can start a club. So we've had, just like Frost Minds Matter, new clubs starting and really trying to meet kids where they're at and what their interests are. So definitely would encourage that, not just because we have a club, but I do see the benefits of that. And like for some of my students, they're like, oh, I don't have any friends with, or any classes with friends, or I want to meet more people with common interests. I always tell them that the after school program is the way to go, because you're just going to show up to a club and be like, we have this in common. And that's really, really awesome for our kids. And it's pretty popular. I would say like that's the place to be from 2:30 to 4:30 after school. Okay, so sorry, I will stop bragging about Frost Minds Matter, but you may be thinking I have 3 or more protective factors. My child has that in place, but I'm still concerned. So now what do I do with that information? And I always tell parents to trust your gut, trust your intuition. That is probably like the best thing to start with. So we've been talking a little bit about typical development, what's atypical. We probably scared you a little bit in the first half, but really your intuition is one of the most important indicators of your child's like psychological well-being. You know your kid way better than anybody else, better than us at school, even though we spend a lot of time with them. And any other adult, you all know it. And you know, like something just seems not quite right. And I always say, like, your kids will say like, oh, my parents don't understand me, but really you are the people that know our kiddos the best. So always trust that. But if something doesn't seem right, it's okay to talk to other parents, talk to your child's pediatrician. If anything, sometimes your child's pediatrician has had this incredible file and they've known your kids since birth. For most of them, they have an incredible record of their history. They also know when maybe something is atypical. They help us quite a bit in terms of ruling out or ruling in, like maybe there's a medical issue. And a lot of times before we focus on a mental health concern, we are looking more to that biological piece to make sure we're not missing something. And there are some biological or medical factors that can produce symptoms that look like mental health issues, but really they're like vitamin deficiencies or allergies or other things. So we usually like to have that component or those team members working with us to help us support that. But they can also provide referrals to other specialists if they're like, you know what, it's really not a medical issue. It is more of a mental health concern. So talking with other parents, your pediatricians are fantastic. And then, like I said before, they are with us for quite a few hours of the day. So school staff can support quite a bit as well. What I usually like to share with parents, though, is that there are limitations, obviously, to what we can do in a school. And there are times we do need the clinical and those private practice or private providers to help support the work that we do. So you can kind of see here, I have on the left, just things that we can do as a school. And there are some benefits to things that we can provide in the school because we do spend quite a bit of time with them. We do have more frequent communication, I think, with families and teachers. I would say one of my favorite things about working in a school is that we can help kids in the moment when they're struggling versus maybe showing up for an appointment later. And then they have to talk about it. But we do a lot of consultation with private providers because our kids forget a lot of the things that they struggled with during the school day. So we can kind of help support, like, this is what we're working on. These are the goals we're working on, and private providers can help us with that. But we really, in the school level, I think the main difference is that we try to focus on the educational issues. So for our kids, it's grades, getting to class, being available for instruction, attendance, Peer conflicts is huge in the middle school setting. We provide a lot of counseling and social skills groups, interventions. We can monitor behavioral changes because again, they're spending a lot of time with us over many days. So we can kind of see if maybe they're appearing a little bit more dysregulated. We can also do, like I said, those suicidal like risk assessments, threat assessments, and we can provide those referrals to families. So if we know like this isn't really an educational issue or a school issue, but we know how to connect you with the right resources, we will definitely do that. And for the most part, when we look into our research, a lot of kids, about 1 in 5 kids will struggle with mental health difficulties. And a lot of times those things are spotted at home and in the school. And even with all the great supports we have, we do see that most of the time our kids are being serviced and provided with interventions, mainly within the school setting, even when they have means to have private support or access to like healthcare and things like that, that for the most part, our kids are getting a lot of their intervention in school. But we also know what our limitations are. And we really aren't treating those root causes and symptoms related to the mental health condition. Sometimes we need safety plans developed when our kids aren't with us, because a lot of crises and things happen on the weekends or after work hours. They also have differences in terms of the settings that they can provide support. We do in Fairfax County Public Schools, we're very, very fortunate to have a continuum of services. So we do have settings that provide kids with pretty intensive support, but sometimes even that isn't enough. And we really need like outpatient programs or hospitalization, like inpatient programs, intensive outpatient or even residential programs to help support our kids. And we'll work very closely with those providers so that we can get our kids back to Frost or whatever their base school is. And then the private providers also help us with a lot of medication management. And again, we can kind of monitor any symptoms that we may be seeing in school. But where we see the best outcomes for our kids is really when we're working together, all 3 of those pieces, that parents are in communication with us, our school teams are working hard, our teachers are communicating with each other, and that we have a release to kind of talk to kids' private providers. And so when we can do that, if our kids are struggling with mental health difficulties, we do see the best outcomes. We're all working on the same goals. We're constantly in communication. We can notice even the slightest things like, oh, they just seem a little irritated today. Oh, I bet it's because of this. And then we can support our kiddos. So really those partnerships between all 3 of those pieces, if a child needs all 3 of those things, is really where we see the biggest positive effects for our kids. And again, I will send this out so you have everyone's contact information, but we are very, very fortunate at Frost to have a very large mental health team. And I do want to say I'll give props to Mr. Harris because he definitely is an administrator. He's very unique in this way that he understands the mental health needs of our students. He takes mental health very seriously for our kiddos, and that is not the norm. I wish it was, and that's what Frost Minds Matter is trying to do, is promote like this is just a normal thing that we deal with, and it's like physical health. We treat it just like anything else. So he definitely will call offices to try and get more mental health support in our schools because he does value the work that our staff does, but also that the need of our kids is pretty high and that it is something that we need to support. So we're fortunate to have 5 school counselors, which is fantastic. I love working with them every day. We have 3 social workers in our building, and then Miss DeLu and I, and now Miss Babaturk is helping us out a couple days a week. But these are our support staff, and Miss Hornbecker is our Director of Student Services. So she's our administrator for our clinical team and counseling team. So she's very excellent in terms of guiding us and helping us through difficult cases and decisions. So there's lots of different avenues and places that we can go in terms of supporting our kids when they're in our school building. I did put here, we do work from 7 to 2:15. My contract's a little bit longer, but for the most part, kids don't always have crises within that time frame. So we try and provide resources for kids even when and families when they're not with us. oops, this is not showing. I probably needed to push a button here, but I'll share this with you, but I do have like, I think the picture is just not showing up. Some mental health resources that we have in the county, and I will give these out to kids in terms of like our crisis link. There are some things, especially at this age, where our students can call and talk or text with a mental health provider 24 hours a day, even if they're not suicidal, but they just really are feeling stressed and need to talk to somebody. And sometimes it's not their parents. Sometimes they email us and we're like, oh, we're not online or we're not available on a Saturday night. So I like to provide that to students, but then also there's some incredible emergency services and different things for kids and families when maybe things do occur when we're not in the school building. This is just another resource slide for you. We provide a lot of things in terms of mental health resources for students. They do have a student site. We have a Zen garden that we've created for kids. A lot of this kind of came through our pandemic, that we created a lot of additional resources, but Fairfax County also has a lot of things for kids and families in terms of mental health resources. And you can click on any of these links when you're looking through different wellness tips and strategies, things that are written just for kids, things that are just for parents. Our Parent Resource Center is ridiculous in the amount of consultation and support that they will provide families. And sometimes it's nice to maybe talk to somebody that's not a part of your school team, but you just want like a second opinion, or you just want some additional support. They do an amazing job with trainings, and they bring in guest speakers from NIH and just wonderful free resources for families. So it's kind of sometimes an untapped resource. If you haven't visited them, they have a library of books and materials, and they truly are passionate about the work that they do. So if you haven't visited them or talked to anybody at the Parent Resource Center, I would definitely recommend that. And then we also have our Healthy Minds blog, which just recently Frost Minds Matter was featured on, talking a little bit about our gratitude project. So really great things. Sign up for them, be connected with FCPS and some of the tools that are available at Frost, because you won't regret it. It's not an email you don't want to read. They do have a lot of support for families when you're like, I really just don't know which way to turn, or I don't know where to go in the with what we're dealing with right now. Okay, we flew through that. Are there any questions that anyone has at the moment? I know probably tonight you'll think about things and then tomorrow you'll say, oh, I do have a question. And again, like I said, I'm happy to always talk through things, or if I don't know the answers, we can definitely point you in the direction that somebody that will have the answer. But any questions that anyone has at the moment? You're like, are we going to be able to fund those grants now? Are we going to get a full committee? Of course.
We will find somebody.
Yes.
I actually have somebody in mind. I'm gonna Facebook stalk a little bit and get the vote, so we will get that taken care of. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you for presenting, but also just for supporting our kids, particularly for those of us who this is our first experience with Frost, was last year and this year, and it has exceeded sort of all my expectations. So really, really appreciate everything that everyone, all the adults at Frost have been supporting our kids. So,
thank you. That's really wonderful to hear. And like I said, I feel really fortunate to work there. I think we are like a little hidden gem in the county, but we do have a reputation. And I always say, it's nice to be a part of that community. And I think it starts with Mr. Harris and it like trickles down where people feel very fortunate to work there. And middle school is such a tough time that staff don't just go there because they're like, oh, I didn't have any other job. I always even tell my students, because they're like, well, you have to do this, it's your job and you're paid to do this. I'm like, no, there are way easier jobs. Like there are way easier things to do in life. And I do feel that, every day, the people we work with and the kids we work with and the families, it's like people really want to be here, and that makes all the difference. And if we can make these really challenging 2 years a little bit better, because you'll see, I'm like, well, if it's not for you, you'll move along and find something else. But When families feel that, I think take a lot of pride in that, because it is a challenging time. I can remember being in middle school and being like, oof, that was like almost traumatic. So when you have a supportive and caring culture and staff that understand that and want to be there every day, it really can make all the difference for kids. And we've just been really fortunate with families too, that will help their kids no matter what, and they work with us and they trust us, and we're like, we're going to try this really crazy thing, and they are like, okay, let's just do it, let's see what happens. So it's a very special place, and I feel very fortunate to be a part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you. Anything else for Dr. Zabel? All right, then my last piece of business is I was looking, our next meeting when we're supposed to hold our elections is scheduled for May 3rd, but that's actually an observation day. That's an O day. So we're gonna have to, as a board, and talk to Mr. Harris and figure out a day that we can reschedule that for. And so we will let folks know well in advance of the new meeting day. Again, this calendar sort of sneaks up on us. Every single time we're surprised. So we're not scheduled to have an April meeting. If we need to have one to get a nominating committee in place, we will let folks know, and hopefully we can get people to volunteer for that and to show up and vote. But that would be a quick meeting. With that, anything else? I know we're almost at 9 o'clock.
I just want to say,
oh, go ahead, Ms. Champ.
I just want to say, I know Mr. Harris wasn't here this evening, but Dr. Zabel, thank you so much for that informative information, and really what you and Mr. Lantis is doing in with those students is seriously, it's really phenomenal. Because some kids, when we talk about after school, they do mention your club. I'm like, dang, I need to go check it out. But thank you really for the information, was just like informative, because it had me thinking about, yeah, they do this. Oh yeah, they do that. For all the work that you do with our students. And seriously, I know you all aren't in the schools, but seriously, Dr. Zabel name is called Nonstop Networking. And I don't know when she has the opportunity to eat lunch, really. So I know Ms. Burback, I know you're there, so I know you get to experience, and I'm hopeful that you're getting some great experience. But thank you again. And thank you to all of you, really. Because like I said, this is a lot of work for, not a lot of people. So thank you for what you're doing for us.
Well, we're recording, so hopefully folks who weren't able to make the meeting will have a chance to review and watch Dr. Zabel's presentation.
Good.
All right, with that, do I get a motion to adjourn? I tried to just adjourn by fiat one time and was told that that's not acceptable. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Unless you all want to stay on all night.
I motion.
All right. Does anyone second?
I'll second. But the chair can actually adjourn the meeting as long as it's at its stated ending time.
Oh, okay. I tried to adjourn one.
Order.
Thank you. Okay, well then we're gonna adjourn. Thank you, everyone.